We are very privileged to have Michael Astor with us. You all know Neeraj. Neeraj is the Managing Director of Polycom for India and South Asia, SAARC region. Very quickly, Michael is also heading up Polycom across the region. I'm sorry, I don't have your exact designation. And he's President Polycom Asia Pacific. And Michael is actually Australian, so he's come at a good time when
we're not talking about it.
We're not talking about it.
You notice I don't have my PowerPoint presentation ready, so I
thought that's all we were going to talk. Perhaps over a few drinks. I was struck by the fact that Michael actually has a bachelor's degree in politics and psychology. And I think I'm a big proponent of the fact that we have lost the edge on liberal arts education in this country. And frankly, the kind of problems we are dealing with today are not just engineering or business problems, but I wish I had a broader liberal arts education when I look at some of the problems we are facing. So it's great to see you heading up a high-tech company despite the fact that you have a non-tech background. And I think it's an edge we have lost in our country. I'm too focused on technology and management. But that's another discussion post some drinks. Michael spent many years with EMC, so some of you may have seen him. He tells me he's been in India before with EMC. What I was hoping we could really do today is, I know we will, I don't know, it's obvious that we will talk about Polycom and we'll talk about some of the stuff that Polycom is doing. But what I had an interest in exploring with Michael and Neeraj was the issue of collaboration. And I wanted to just reflect on this for a minute. People have been talking about collaboration for a long time. Innovation, collaboration is the new competition and so on, fairly cliched things that you keep hearing. I think that things have evolved to a point where it's not just about collaborating, but it's also about how do you lead collaboration. And I'm not talking about collaborative leadership, because collaborating with each other is a given in today's day and age. You have to collaborate with each other, you have to collaborate across product groups, you have to collaborate across geographies, you have to collaborate with customers, you have to collaborate with suppliers and so on. I think that is a stuff that is now become part of the mainstream in how we operate. But for the last few years I've been thinking about this whole issue of how as a leader do you lead the collaboration? How do you make collaboration happen in your companies? Because the bigger problem I find as a leader is doing that. You still have problems that people come to you and say, the problem is with that guy, the problem is with so and so. And we all understand the merits of collaboration, but as a leader, how do you get your organization to be more collaborative? That's a very different challenge from saying we all need to collaborate. That I think is obvious. That point has already been made. So I'd like to start with that, if you will. And I'm sure you have seen this. You've seen this in multiple companies. You've seen this across multiple functions, geographies. But as a leader, and in our case, our CIOs have a tough task of convincing business managers, vendors, CEOs, board members, CFOs, and are almost sort of forcing collaboration, because each of them wants to do things their way. Everybody thinks they know IT and what they want done yesterday. So as a business leader, how do you get people to collaborate? Now that we all know that we have to collaborate.
It's funny, if I look back at my career, a lot of what I've been asked to do, and perhaps this is because I don't have an engineering background, is very much been around change management, around acquiring companies, integration, cultural empathy, hiring, firing, creating profitable organisations, taking lemons, turning it into lemonade, some people say. But in the end, people tend to start creating a modus operandi of working, which is either a break fix or a maintain, or many other modes of the way they operate in their business life. And for me, most of mine has been in very fast-moving markets, like data deduplication, for example, very small window, or several other technologies, large business intelligence applications that I was involved in with Teradata, very small windows of opportunity and changing very rapidly. And it's take technology, educate everybody, deliver it to end users and customers, train channel partners, build a team, create sales teams, create technical excellence. And we just seem to be swamped by this constant need to evolve very quickly within a short period of time. And having started my career and sort of possibly finishing my career in the technology industry, I think it's not that different to my peers that I meet, that I've known for many years in banking and manufacturing and automotive industry and transport and others, which we all have really a very, very similar type set of pressures, which is why we can take advantage of many sort of across the boards or horizontal technologies and management techniques and move between industries at a time. And so, one of my most exciting experiences has been coming to work at Polycom, because it's the first time I've actually come to a company that's used video and video collaboration, especially, as just the fundamental tenement of what it sells, but also the way it operates. So my experience with creating and motivating teams has always been by travel like this, by con calls and WebEx and team meetings, and creating a sort of like a management cadence of communicating strategy and then inspecting our operational excellence and understanding results and then feedback back, but with a pretty blunt set of tools. And email especially. I mean, email has become a pretty overused method of communication, which I nearly find annoying at certain times. But I won't be doing what the head of HOS Origin is doing and taking it out. But it's become a very blunt object, mostly because of the enormous amount of it. It's now all becomes entirely desensitized to email. So what I've found is coming to Polycom and the way is that when you actually have video that's available to you immediately at any point in time, it's incredibly easy to use, and you can talk to anybody just like picking up a phone. So the same effort for me to dial Neeraj here in India, I can actually have a video call with him. Then what you actually realise is that the personability of that contact is enormous. So in this role, what I've found is I've been able to accelerate some of the progress, but also some of my communications with video very rapidly. So last week, for example, we had our first Q1 all hands. And we are going through some significant change. I mean, Polycom is going through a lot of change. We've got a lot of new products. We've got an entirely different go-to-market approach than we did probably a year ago. And we've got new competitors and new pressures. But actually, what I was able to do is address 1,200 people by video and have everybody from individuals on iPads at home to rooms in Bangalore with 300 people in an auditorium style, to small meeting rooms or little cluster rooms, to individual desktops. People on any device bring their own work provided, room-based systems, auditorium, and actually talk to them at the same level in the same way, and they see the same content and get the same message. And actually, we would have had in that 1 hour meeting probably 40 or 50 responses or discussions between those endpoints. And again, it was people on individual desktops or iPads or in the auditorium room putting their hand up and speaking. And so that communication is dealt with exactly the same way across no matter where they were, what location they were on. And that ability then gives me the ability to communicate a change in strategy and a change in operations very, very quickly. So share content very quickly, show everybody what we want, communicate in a very, very democratic fashion. And so, I sort of feel that's actually given me a strong edge. And I think that's probably got to be the way to use video and the way you actually use it in terms of your management process, in terms of actually changing what you're doing in your day-to-day life. So it's become a big fundamental tenet of what we do.
Do you think it's going to become as Is there a danger that video will become like email one day?
Well, by then we'll be holographs, and we'll all turn up into a sort of like this virtual room, and we'll be sitting here as holographs. So, everything's got to go that process. I remember when...
one of our big politicians in India fought an election recently that...
By holograph.
But he was beaming across 26 locations, right? Yeah. 26 locations?
Yeah.
26. 26 locations, and people thought he was God, because, a lot of our people in the villages and thought this was just a miracle. Like he was actually appearing in this. But go ahead.
I think email is, if you look at some of the social media tools, I've got a lot of friends at Salesforce.com, and we would probably look at Salesforce.com as one of the most innovative software providers in the cloud, or just application business tool providers we have. And they have an internal capability called Chatter. Some of you, if you use Salesforce.com or if you implemented, they have a feature called Chatter, which is their social media within their application. And people stop using email at Salesforce.com because they'd rather search on the Chatter feeds for information rather than send an email to ask for information. So, again, for me, I've stopped using my mobile phone unless I'm in the car or out of the office. For them, they've stopped using email because they're using social media within the enterprise. And when Mark Benioff first sort of started to talk about this, I was sort of sitting there basically thinking, why would I use Facebook instead of actually sending an email? But now I get it. Now that's changing the fundamental use of email with the social media embedded within the day-to-day life and the business process, and that's sort of changed the way that the email is then used. So I think email, will video, possibly, will evolve.
Right. Neeraj, do you see any particular trends in India, given your extensive experience across companies and you've seen business evolve in India? Do you see a greater degree of collaboration between people, and what are some of the challenges of collaboration in India that you see?
I think collaboration, per se, as you said, is almost a given now. Collaboration and collaborating well is actually, I think, it's a need for survival. If you don't collaborate well, you don't survive in today's market. The market is cutthroat. You need agility in order to be able to serve your customers, in order to have quicker time to market, in order to be able to beat your competitors who are trying to do exactly the same thing. So collaboration is almost something which, if you're doing it well, you're succeeding. If you're not doing it well, innovation actually comes out of collaboration. Right? The ability to get to your customer quicker than somebody else comes from collaboration. So all of these things are some things which are being driven by collaboration. So yes, absolutely, I would say that in India, collaboration is something which is exceedingly becoming apparent in a lot of enterprises. If we look at somebody like, for example, in Infosys. Infosys used to, I'll give you one example. Infosys used to actually get their entire staff across from the world, most of the staff, into Bangalore for their awards. This is something that they can actually do very easily by cutting cost across video. And this is not exactly collaboration, but this is something where you get people together into one room and actually are able to do this simply across video. So you cut costs, that is one aspect of it. When you're developing a product, as an example, so we are developing products sitting in Bangalore. We are collaborating across with people sitting in Israel. So you can do collaboration, you can do annotation, you can do various things which otherwise a designer in Israel actually sends across to somebody in our Bangalore office who looks at it, sends it back the next day, and then somebody in Israel looks at it and probably sends back a response. So instead of doing all of that, if you're sharing your design, you're not just sitting talking on video, you're sharing your design, you're annotating and writing on it. And that is something which actually cuts down the time to develop a product and therefore effectively become the time to market. So we are doing that. People like let's say Intel sitting in Bangalore are developing absolutely new processes. So yes, absolutely 100% we see that collaboration is increasing in Indian companies tremendously. And as a result, the companies are quicker, companies are more agile, companies are able to serve you better, customer service is improving. So all of that I think is certainly absolutely.
Michael, we were talking a little bit about this whole idea of collaborating on a problem rather than just using collaboration tools to talk to each other. That is a many alternatives. So you've now been exposed to this sort of new way of looking at the world since you came to Polycom. What's your most interesting example that you've seen of this kind of collaboration to actually jointly solve a problem?
Exactly. Well, I'll tie the two together. So the other day it was being described to me at a large English-based engine manufacturer that they had an iPad with a camera. They're video conferencing with some of the engineers, a room of engineers in the UK. They have the camera on an extension in a large aircraft engine looking at a part that had failed. And so what they're doing is they're looking at the part that's failed and they're talking to the people at the same time and discussing the actual failure of the part, what's caused the failure, what they can do about it, and how they should rectify it in terms of the key design. And for me, that sort of brings together that it's not the video communication that's counting; it's what you're collaborating on that's important, and the way you're using the video to discuss it or to actually look at it. So I've also seen examples where they're taking chip designs or a design of a particular piece of furniture or something and rotating it while they're discussing it, annotating it, discussing it, making changes or recommendations. It's where we're doing a lot of work with whiteboards, electronic whiteboards, and alternate displays. So let's call it over time. I'm sure there'll be 3D displays embedded within the video, or the ability to represent that. And so things like using a whiteboard with video, so that you can actually be talking and discussing on the whiteboard, and therefore evolving the story or collaborating on the story or design. So those things I find particularly interesting. It's the application that's sort of driving the need for video rather than just the discussion. The discussion has been important, and that's part of the old use of video in terms of our point-to-point approach that we've sort of used in the past.
For me, interestingly, I'll just add to that, one of the things that we saw recently, about 6-7 months ago, there was a surgery being performed in one of the northern European nations. That surgery was broadcast live, actually. When you broadcast, in the sense it was a video conference going on. So people sitting in our video conference centers, doctors, would actually see the surgery going on, and doctors who were performing the surgery, giving a narration of what was going on, and people at various locations could actually ask a question. So normally, if you look at teaching hospitals, surgery is going on inside the theatre, and you normally have a balcony where you have doctors viewing the surgery as it goes on. In this particular case, it's a rare surgery going on, rare surgical procedure, which is broadcast across half the world with folk through it in a video conference. So I think that was one of the most interesting applications that I actually saw.
I've always watched these fascinating videos of these surgeries on some of these national, not National Geographic, but channels like that, history channels. I always wondered, I don't want to be the guy being operated at that time. You don't want people around the world looking at your kidneys, but that's okay. I guess
you don't want a surgeon with stage fright, do you?
That's right. Actually, I find the most interesting example of collaboration at my home because I'm colorblind. So whenever if I have to pick up flowers, I just turn on my camera and I call my wife up. I say, I think this is the color you want, because I can't make out which color it is quite often, and it's good to have that. Because, anyway, collaboration starts at home, I guess. Before I turn it to the audience for some questions, Michael, if you were to look at, so this area of collaboration where you're solving a problem together is fascinating, and I think at least in my McKinsey consulting days, we used to do a lot of that. Fortunately for us there, it was all about only sharing PowerPoint slides, so it was not that difficult. Thankfully, as consultants, that's all we do. We don't really solve any real problem. But I think, what are some other areas, what's other ways to think about where collaboration is happening?
Yep, it's a good point. I think we're going to be, the next wave of what we are doing, what we're working on, the way videos is used is a sort of like an inside-out point of view. So pushing video to communications as a medium. So, if I was a supplier to you and I wanted to have a discussion with you about my product, my services or whatever, the best and most effective way, frankly, is for you to say to me, well, let's quickly video conference, and you to send me a link browser. I click on the browser, it uses my existing infrastructure, whether it comes from Facebook, Google Talk, you know, my Skype client, and very quickly I can then demonstrate my product. I can actually demonstrate something and talk to you, and let's face it, that's a very quick transaction. You're pushing video to me, for me to actually come and give you a service. I mean, that's not the way that video has been used in the past. I mean, if you think about, you know, I mean, if any of you ever been to Walmart in Arkansas, I was there for a couple of weeks on an assignment with Teradata, and they have literally 400 one-on-one meeting rooms where people are coming from all over the world to come and sell them their products. And you know, that can be broken in half straight away by using this method. So you want to talk to me? That's fine. Here, click on this link. It's going to create a video session with me, and then you have the ability to post your content or share with me your design, your product, your service, and then we can have a discussion, collaboration on it, and then we can decide to go forward or not. On top of that, I have the ability then to call several other people into that discussion very quickly on the fly. And that's where the old style of having a room, booking a room, you know, your PA sets up the room, the IT gets involved because they can't work out how to stick the 5-pin thing into the PC. All the executives sit there like dummies, asking for desktop support to come and fix their session. And then 15 minutes into that allotted hour, the meeting starts, they go to run over, but it's all booked out, so the actual telepresence thing stops. That's the old type of video. And I think the new type of video would be pushing and collaborating very quickly. It means that people can get into it very quickly. I can request all of you, other people to come in quickly, and we can quickly share and look at things together.
So is this now a accepted terminology, push video? Or?
No,
I've never heard that.
This is a Michael Out terminology.
Oh, okay.
It starts now, but I think that's the way I think of it. Is that I would push video to you. So you know, I'm sure we'll come up with a smart term for it, and we're developing that product with a lot of service providers at the moment, and the way that actually the service providers can help us to deliver that, both within the private cloud and as a public cloud application. But I think that really sort of depicts how we're going to do it.
In a way, it's a little bit like when people send you a call-in number for a conference call.
It is. Yeah. It is exactly the same. So,
except I'm still looking for an application, Michael. Maybe Polycom can help us with this, which will dial the number, the user ID, and the password. Because it's difficult to keep track of these. I think there are some apps that's supposed to do it, but someday I hope they will solve that.
Actually, part way going towards it. So one of the things that Mike was talking about, where you actually push something, it's a link.
Yeah, it's a link.
So once somebody clicks on that link, actually.
So Neeraj, is that going to be platform agnostic? So if I have Skype and Google Talk, will it work with that, or will I have to have something from you that sits on my laptop? How does that work?
So ideally, this thing is going to go in 2 steps.
Right.
I think one of the first is that, you know, if you ask any of the CIOs sitting here, so one of the limitations that they'll probably always see is that video is still something which is used not for collaboration so much, but it's for meetings. It is for meetings internally, you know, from one location to another location to a third location. That's what we use it for.
Right.
Mostly to talk to each other.
Right.
Now, so one of the things we talked about is that it goes from simple meeting to, let's say, collaboration, but it can be as simple as somebody's got a spreadsheet and you're making annotations on it, whether it's sales figures, whether it's something else, whether it's an engineering design. So it's going there, but it is still within. Now, the issue that we always have is that there are offerings which are so-called standards-based, there are offerings which are so-called non-standards-based. So say Skype, which is non-standards-based, a Polycom or a Cisco, which is standards-based, still finds it difficult to talk to each other. So I think the issue right now, the first and foremost is that, let's say, the standards-based offerings don't talk to each other, which is a Polycom or Cisco or something else. So now whether they sit within your own organization or outside it, yes, they can talk to each other, but it is still a difficult thing to do, and you schedule conversations with each other. So I think the next step after that is how you pull in, if you as somebody who's originating the conference. If you're originating the conference, can you originate the conference to include somebody on Skype, somebody on Google Talk, somebody on Facebook, somebody on LinkedIn, or FaceTime, or say Link or something like that. So that is the next step where at least you can originate the call and pull people in. So one of the things that we are now bringing out is how do you, as the originator, perhaps have people on a buddy list. So if you've got a Skype list, you've got a Link buddy list, you've got a Google Talk buddy list, you can actually see everybody's presence on it. If you can see people's presence on it and you want to pull 6 people into the conference, you can do so from a Polycom platform simply by dragging and dropping people on various different platforms. So as an originator, you've now been able to do that. So what these people see, the 6 people over there see on their screens is simply what you are pushing across. So the video format is the Polycom video format, the content sharing is the Polycom video content sharing. So in that sense, they get a unified and a uniform view. Right? So it doesn't matter which platform they're on. So that is, I would say, step 2. Step 3 at some point is, irrespective of you being the originator, how can people talk to each other across completely different platforms? So that is utopia. That I think is still somewhat far out. But as an originator, you should be able to pull in people across from different platforms. So that is something which is very much in clarity. You should see what's happening in the next quarter.
Oh wow! So you are going to have a solution that allows us.
Absolutely. We actually announced it back in October, and it should be rolling out sometime in the next quarter.
So utopia will never happen. So are you saying that it will never happen, or are you saying that?
I think it is one of those things where solutions will be built, somewhere within the cloud. Now today, when you look at, if you look back at, let's say, early 90s, cell phones were being rolled out. Just look at India, if you remember cell phones in those days. So you probably had a bag of SIM cards which you carried.
Yes, right. I used to have 16.
16 SIM cards, right? You carried one for Delhi, one for Bombay, one for elsewhere. So each state. And then eventually you got to a point where these guys established roaming agreements, then you had clearing houses.
But still you have to put in a number for each state.
Still you had to put in a number, but eventually you reached a point where, as clearing houses came into being, now you do not think about what you're doing. You dial a number, irrespective of somebody sitting on an AT&T network in the US, somebody on a Telstra network in Australia, you're on Airtel or Vodafone here, and you're connected. You're not thinking about any of these things. So video is now actually getting to a point where that is actually getting possible, but that has to be possible through something sitting in the cloud, which is basically something being run by the service providers. Essentially just the way the rest being run by voice. So there is an organization which came together about a year ago, which is the Open Visual Collaboration Consortium. Now, the idea of that organization is to actually make this ubiquity possible. That any endpoint can dial any other endpoint, irrespective of what the technology of that endpoint is, and irrespective of the network that you're sitting on. So today, when I want to call outside of my organization, I'll say, please dial into that IP number. Then I will have somebody test it first to see if it actually works. Only after that, I will have the 2 executives sit down and talk to each other. Now, the OVCC, what it's trying to make possible is that ad hoc video calling should be possible. So whether I'm sitting here and somebody's with a Cisco endpoint in Australia, I should be able to call that through some directory. The settlement mechanism must exist between the carriers. That is also happening. So that organization exists today. People like Airtel in India are members, people like Telstra are members, AT&T, BT, and all of these are members. We expect that somewhere in this year, they will actually roll out their first set of services. So there is, some of what I call as utopia is kind of beginning to take first steps there.
So at least how Star Trek used to show people communicating all that when starting. Michael, one last question. We were talking outside about the mainstreaming, which was sort of the third area. So there was the problem solving, there was the push video, and then making it part of your, talk about that a bit. How do you make it part of your process? And what are examples of that?
It's very interesting because I think that, like I'm 48, I remember the introduction of email, and are you a little bit older?
No.
Maybe a year or two. But it's funny when you see these evolving technologies, and I remember getting my first PC, and it wasn't that long, or it didn't seem like that long ago, but I guess it was. But the reality is, if you're a 28-year-old person with possibly an MBA or a PhD, your expectation is that you can use video. You've used video many times in your life, and all sorts of media content. And those 25 to 30-year-old, I think that we refer to them as Generation X, not Generation Y, but their expectation will be that they can use video and have ubiquitous collaboration on anything by the time they're executives. I mean, as they're moving through, we're seeing that generation just expect to be able to do these things. They're an entitled generation technically, right? So, I mean, my 7-year-old daughter the other day, when we were at my parents' place, literally did not know what a VCR was. She had no clue what a VCR tape was, and I have a feeling that the 28-year-old PhD of today, or just the average worker in the street, just expects to be able to Skype, expects to be able to use video, expects to be able to use images and create images and annotate images and share and communicate with everything they want. And as a result, I think we'll be pushed and driven to be using this more and more. And so an interesting topic in the last week has been this Marissa Mayers at Yahoo discussing home working. And a lot of people, there's been a lot of criticism of her. And let's face it, that's probably a trend that's actually been occurring in the US, very significantly for a very long time. And actually, when you look at what she's now saying, whether it's PR or not, she says, well, actually, the reason I picked this up is that if I looked at the VPN dial-in times, they're very, very low. So she's actually saying, well, actually, my average dial-in VPN time of a home worker is only 5 hours a day, therefore, I'm only getting 5 hours of work a day. Now, the question would be, okay, well, is that the right measure or what? But the fact is that's now an established standard. I think video use of image, use of social media internally will just be standards that are driven by us. And I can't even imagine going back 10 years to the processes we were using. So I think that these generations will drive us towards it very quickly. And that will mainstream because they'll want to need it.
No, I can say that in our industry, which is media, video is completely replacing written content. I find that also, and with devices, it's, I think there was a time when I would sit in the loo with my Blackberries. Now I'm sitting there with the iPad playing some video in the morning, and that's how I get my news. I didn't mean to share intimate details of what I do, but it's just a good example of how things have evolved and become mainstream. I'd like to open it up to a discussion with our CIOs in the audience, and if you'd like to ask questions, make comments. I'm sure there are some pet peeves and issues that you have. This is a good time to ask. Yes, go ahead. Pick up a mic and.
Okay. So there was a good, interesting work I've done in a call center. Like voice is there, so people love to have the call on a desk and all. Similarly, now trend has been changed, so there was a queue we had formed for the chat. So a lot of web users were there, so they were messaging to us. They don't want to call anyone, they want to basically get instant help while somewhere or something. But in my experience, like what I experienced, like in US and some other continent, people love to see the face who's talking. So now Polycom and other technologies, other companies, they have introduced video on a desk. So my question is, like, as we have a voice queue, chat queue, in future can we have video queues as well? I mean, like somebody is helping to someone in US and other like Australia or some place, right? So they want to see her face, like video chat. They want to. Can they do that? Like let's scenario. My scenario is somebody is calling, and he will land in the video queue. There are 10 people sitting. Call will be transferred to anyone.
So you've created in your mind an application for video.
Absolutely
right.
Correct.
So and one of the things we are actually
You're going to get on a royalty for this idea.
I'm going to get a royalty. So I'm going to take that away. In fact, I'm going to present my own ideas a bit later on a video call with the US. But as if I built it. But exactly to your point, one of the things we are doing, which is what is enabled by the body, the OBCC, is creating a set of APIs you can create an application around video. And what we're seeing is a strong push to say yes, whether it's queuing or portfolio presentation or embedding that in the application so that the video becomes a click or a link in an application which initiates a video call. So we've opened up all of our APIs to the developers. There's going to be a strong push by us to the ISVs and the developers and our partners that are developing applications to actually do exactly that type of thing. So I think that's a very practical and possibly not a particularly hard thing to create. Especially around customer service, we know that if you create a video call as a point of customer service, your chance to resolve the call, or in a selling environment, your close rate with video versus voice is much, much higher. 50 or 60% types higher. So there's a lot of process gap using that in CRM systems and in call center management systems to actually say, oh, can you use video? Are you Skype enabled? I'll push a link to you. We'll have a video discussion and we'll look at what the problem you're having, or we'll look at an opportunity or your portfolio or something like that. And then, again, share that content, look at it together over video, and the trust level is much, much higher. So that's the exact type of application we're looking at. Changes the whole game.
Thanks.
Other questions, comments? Yes.
Michael, you said that you will be encouraging people to get their own devices and and join enterprise-wide video calls. Do you see challenges here? Because like in India, we have the 3G network which is implemented, but really the quality of video on those are still not as per enterprise standards. So do you see challenges in that area? Do you think it's going to get better? People had a lot of hopes on 3G, now 4G is coming. Do you think it's going to get better?
Yeah. I tell you what I do think is that, and I know this to be true, is the video quality, if you take video and voice, which is, you can have audio by itself, but you can't have video without audio, right? So, but if you compromise the video quality of the picture, it's much, much, much less important than if you compromise the audio. If you have a video call and the audio is compromised, it's a terrible experience. If you have an average video with packet loss and some slight, but the audio is still perfect, then actually the call is effective. We never compromise the audio. So the way we create our systems is that depending on the available bandwidth, we always throttle back the video before we touch the audio and maintain the audio's integrity. What I'm finding because I'm in a lot of different networks, I'm in Japan and Korea, Australia and Hong Kong and China and here, all parts of Southeast Asia, is that I don't think the 3G networks generally are creating enough experience for a full high definition video environment. And in fact, a lot of home broadband environments are still not creating more than about a 256 or 3 to 400K type of experience. However, I'm still having so I have at home a 8 meg, so 6 down, 2 up. The issue is actually the up, like my video quality back into the enterprise when I'm at home. And so as long as I actually reduce my video, which I can temper, I can control, I'm still getting perfect quality in, but my video is slightly compromised out. I think the 3G LTE type standards are going to make it a lot better for our wireless or our quality. I think home broadband in a lot of countries still leaves a lot to be desired. As soon as you're outside a heavy metropolitan environment, and we can do the best job we can, but there's still a fair ways to go. And I think our systems are as optimised as any, especially iPad, iPhone, Samsung, Galaxy thing, but it's still questionable. You still have to find the right bandwidth or the right pipe to actually make the experience better. So, you bring up a good point, and it's firmly in the hands of the telco to try and facilitate that for us.
Can I ask another question on this? Are you planning to set up or developing some codecs which actually give you this kind of experience on lower bandwidths or on in areas where there is when you say metros, iPhones are typically in metros. If you go in the interiors, you'll probably be on a VGA camera kind of a thing with very low bandwidth. So are you developing some codecs? Are you working?
So I'll respond to that question. So there are two things, right? One is that yes, 3D networks and all that are still patchy across the country, but where 3D networks actually work, codecs actually do work. So, but there are two ways of tackling this. One is that you actually look at the codec and you try to improve the capability. So the protocol which is now followed, for example, in Polycom Codecs, is something which is called H.264 high profile. So it actually compresses the need for bandwidth, or lowers the need for bandwidth. So you can actually do high definition video conferencing at, let's say, 512 kilobits, as opposed to earlier where you were doing it at 1 megabit, at say 720p. So yes, the need for bandwidth has also come down. Second, in today's world, most codecs today, at least the hardware codecs, hardware-based codecs, have been using something which is called advanced video codec technology, AVC technology, which is not very compromising when it comes to packet loss. Right? So there is another technology which is called SVC, or scalable video codec, or scalable video codecs. Now that technology is far more compromising and takes into account packet losses, takes into account degradation of bandwidth. So as it does that, codec actually automatically scales down the video requirement. You may lose the high definition quality, you may come down to standard definition, but at least your video keeps working, does not pixelize, does not disturb quality on the other end, and your audio remains okay. So we are working on those codecs. In fact, the new codecs that we've announced back in Q4 of last year are codecs based on SVC and AVC. So AVC, when you're using MPLS networks, use AVC. When you are, let's say, in the interiors, some other places where bandwidth is not so good, use the SVC capability. The SVC capability is also being built into the software codecs, which go into, let's say, an iPad, which go into the phone devices, so on and so forth. In fact, things like we've licensed our SVC codec to the UCIF, the UC Interoperability Forum, which in turn has licensed that, for example, to Microsoft to build into Link 2013. So these kind of codecs actually are codecs which are meant for scenarios, as you described. So one is that the technology is moving in that direction. The second is that the 3D networks, by my own experience, this is in the Grand Hyatt in Bombay. The Grand Hyatt in Bombay, the quality that I was actually getting on Wi-Fi was poorer than what I was getting on the Reliance 3D network. In the Reliance 3D network, I was actually getting 3.2 meg in, and I was getting about 1.2 meg out, which I was actually able to do a fairly good video call on. So it depends a little bit on the networks today. The 3D networks are not that great. 4G, hopefully will get rolled out. As 4G gets rolled out, I would say the bandwidth also will improve over the next year, 2 years, whatever it's going to take. But the quality of codecs, or the capability of codecs of working on poorer bandwidth is also changing. So in that sense, I would say that it's easier to make video a little bit more ubiquitous now.
Take a couple more questions before we break for drinks.
And not just questions, if you have any interesting experiences, observations, and that, one was pretty interesting observation there. So, if you've done something which is, stood you in good stead, is unique, we would like to hear about it as well.
I have a question. So, we inherently believe that more collaboration is better for business, it's all good. But what are your views on over collaboration or bad collaboration? I mean, this is beyond technology. What do you think about everyone is with video on their desktops? Do you have a view on over collaboration and bad collaboration?
Yeah. You know what, it comes back to this email discussion, the cloud of email. I cannot stand it when I miss something, or I've missed something and someone said, oh, I sent you an email. and we've all had it, right? And
you were CC'd on.
Yeah, you were CC'd. And I said, well, yes, within the 400 or 500 emails I got that day, yes, I might have missed that from a person I've never met before, so it didn't come up as a name I had noticed, or frankly, I got another 50 emails from that person that day that were also semi-relevant, perhaps even not relevant at all. And I think, now that I've got texts, email, WhatsApp, and a number of other things, I'm actually getting bombarded by, and as soon as anybody finds out that I'm not responding to email, then they actually contact me through several other forms of media. And I think one of the great things about video collaboration and sharing information is that you really have to be engaged. And I myself have sat on thousands of voice calls while I look at the cricket results and lament Australia's performance, while pretending to be engaged in a phone call or a WebEx. And when you're in video, you have to be engaged. If you come to a video call, you're in it. And actually, it's a much easier.
And you have to be properly dressed.
You have to be properly dressed, or at least half dressed from there up. But I sat on a quarterly business review, which I had to present for an hour 3 weeks ago. Went from 11 PM my time till 4 AM. my time the following morning. It was our, it was the 3 geography presidents, all the business leaders from Polycom. And actually, what I found is that if I'd been trying to do that just I would have been asleep at 1 o'clock in the morning. But being with video, you really have to you do have to be engaged, but it's a lot easier to be engaged. You can judge the audience, you're watching the dynamics, you're looking at their content. So I feel as if it's makes it a lot easier for me to stay on topic and on message. So you don't feel as if you're being bombarded with irrelevant information, or you don't end a call. How many times have you ended a conference call, put the phone down or put the phone off, and actually you've done hours of email while it's been on, and actually you can't even remember the key salient points of that WebEx call. Unfortunately, the people holding that call think you've been fully engaged. Their expectation is that they've communicated to you, you know what they want done, they've given you directives, and you're right on board. And we all know that that's very often not the case. So with video, it's the fact that you're communicating, collaborating, but it really is a very meaningful methodology. So it's why I've sort of, it was one of the reasons I joined Polycom, because I believe it. And that for me is a salient point. It's good and bad communications as a leader and executive are very easy to tell what's sticking. And when you're throwing strategy, direction, and operational leadership desires out there, you know what's sticking and what's not. But with video, you make sure everybody's responsible because they have to engage in the discussion.
I just see that the smartphones are getting enhanced, that the feature on smartphones are getting enhanced, and that same cloud-based services are there, and they are coming closer to the enterprise. So enterprise are trying to pick up those services. So how do you see that as market growing? How their adoption around that in enterprise? Will they dent the way you are doing the business, or do you think that it will not impact?
I just think the smartphone is just going to just for us becomes another endpoint. So the other day I was on my own iPhone 5 on a hotel Wi-Fi. I could have been on an iPad, a desktop in a room-based system. So we're not seeing anything different. I just think the smartphone is just becoming ubiquitous endpoint. I know that there's all of you are dealing with issues around security around mobile devices. For us, we're creating security at many different levels. And the great thing is using Polycom Real Presence on one of the mobility solutions. We've created a secure method to use video within the enterprise using a BYOD device. I myself, I use a Mac. I use a Mac with a Parallels version of our desktop on it. I carry an iPad, I carry an iPhone. So I use all 3 devices. I use the Mac version within Parallels, the secure version. I use within the Windows version, I use a Mac version for some desktop calls with low bandwidth environments at hotels. Same security methodologies are all supported. Or I use the iPhone or the iPad. So I think that's important that looking at BYOD strategy that's accommodated, that you've got, obviously you guys no one's going to open themselves up to any security concerns or issues, but our applications are meant to, our endpoints are meant to sort of work in there, and security is well defined and understood. You'll see some other methods we're having and releasing around firewall management, around navigating through or helping navigate through your firewall. We understand exactly what you're trying to set up. And so you'll see some other technology for us coming to help you navigate through those firewall issues as well, which makes it, again, easier, so much more ubiquitous to make those calls and join those calls.
Actually, I'll just maybe add to that. If you look at video conferencing per se, over the last couple of decades, 20 years or so, ever since video conferencing, from its infancy to high-definition video conferencing as it exists today, the number of codecs worldwide, the number of video-enabled rooms worldwide is about 2.5 million, or maybe a little more, somewhere between 2.5 to 3 million. So the growth has been fairly slow in that sense. Now, when you look at soft endpoints, such as on an iPad, such as on a Galaxy Tab, such as on smartphones, with about 14 million smartphones getting sold in India last year, and the number continuing to accelerate, I guess that within the next 5, 6, 7 years, there will be tens of millions of codecs sitting on these kind of devices. So that drives a spiral where video adoption actually accelerates in a very, very major way. And what does that drive for companies like Polycom? Somebody has to build an engine which actually pulls all these conferences together. Having a codec on an endpoint is not the be all or the end all. Right? There has to be, an engine in between what we call as the real presence platform, a bridge, or the MCU, which actually brings all these endpoints together into a conference as and when that is needed, which manages all these endpoints, which perhaps pushes, refreshes all these endpoints. Right? So all of that actually requires a huge amount of infrastructure in the cloud. So I think as these grow and proliferate, that is good for companies like us because that helps us build up the infrastructure. Second, as all of this happens, the need for more and more video actually in rooms across the world continues to increase. So you will also find that this will actually drive hardware endpoints as well in more and more conference rooms in our existing organizations, as well as in organizations which are not yet adopted video. So to me, things like whether it's tablets, whether it's things like phones, actually getting video onto them, or video conferencing clients onto them, whether it's from Polycom, whether it's from somewhere else, so long as they build on a standards-based offering, they will continue to drive the need for video, which will actually give impetus to our growth. So I think that is something which is actually very valuable.
So I was coming to find out the cloud-based services which is being offered right now, and then basically the underlying platform can be the Cisco or Polycom or any other player. So the smart-based phone, you rightly put across that it's enhancing further capability around it. But the enterprise point of view, I'll definitely want to explore it. That I don't want to get the dedicated way. I want to get into the OPEX way. Maybe they look into that way that my immediate capex requirement is reduced, and then I can meet the business requirement. Absolutely. I'm just coming from that point of view.
To market to the customer may become slightly different.
Yeah.
Instead of selling hardware and MCU sitting in your own organization, we may be selling those to certain organizations, but we may also be selling this into the cloud, so that the service providers can give you often. Absolutely.
Right.
So are you saying that you would see more conference rooms? I thought you were going to say that conference rooms will disappear because everybody is going to use a device.
I don't see them disappearing at all. In fact, this is something which it's like a spiral. Right? It continues to accelerate and become bigger and bigger. So more video that tends to get used. Today, video meeting rooms are largely still underutilized. When you go to a large number of organizations, there will be some which are utilizing them to an absolute 100%. There will be some where 5% utilization, 10%, 15% utilization. Now imagine that in various organizations, people actually get pad-like devices, tablets, phones, and everybody is in a position where they can actually collaborate now, or at least talk on video, and people would like to talk on video. Now, if there are 10 people who are talking on video, right, and they actually, it's not just always one-to-one, it is 4 or 5 people who want to talk together. Well, a bridge is necessary somewhere. B, then people at least within the organization will say, okay, you guys can carry on your pad-like devices, I need to go to a room somewhere so that we can get all of you onto a bigger screen. So that in turn is actually going to drive the need for more and more conference rooms as well.
And that whole telepresence idea.
Telepresence is something which the term, pardon the word, but term has become bastardized.
Yeah.
Over a period of time. Telepresence used to mean immersive telepresence.
Right.
Immersive telepresence with multiple screens and nice audio and all of that. Now that was what was traditionally known as telepresence. Today, anything is telepresence. Your desktop-based systems are telepresence. Your in fact, even we ourselves, the client which actually sits on a tablet, we call it mobile telepresence. Right? So telepresence per se, I think, is something which is now come to mean something different. But certainly rooms are also, I think, going to continue to grow now. Whether it's always going to be the same kind of 3-screen telepresence or 4-screen telepresence is questionable. In today's world, if you look at whether it's Cisco's telepresence, whether it's ours, you've actually seen telepresence actually go down the last couple of years. But certainly overall video endpoints are continuing to increase. So maybe the shape and form of things will change, but certainly rooms will be enabled on video. And you will see multiple soft clients and other clients.
Yeah.
We arrive on such innovation which can be cost effective and the more potential. For such organizations, those are low level organizations. Low level in the sense that smaller companies.
So a couple of things. One is that if that is the case, right, then obviously needs to proliferate video to either desktop. I don't mean the desktop based devices. Those are expensive. You're absolutely right. List price of those things starts from $10,000 onwards. So those are expensive. But certainly, when we say desktop video, that can actually go to your laptop. That can go to your tablet device. That can go to anything. So from that perspective, you can actually video enable people with soft clients sitting on their devices. And the one thing that we should invest in is some kind of infrastructure which sits centrally, which can manage that conference. If the conference room is busy, you can all at least collaborate from your desks, right? Or even go sit in another room and actually put up perhaps your laptop and have that image projected on a screen somewhere. So in that sense, there are multiple ways of getting around this. And but one of the other things, of course, also is that there must be somehow a culture driven in the organization that if a room is being booked, the room is being booked. And if it is being booked, and if it is specifically meant for video, then it's specifically meant for video.
But that's
I'll actually give you an example. This is maybe different.
You have to tell him how to collaborate with his boss.
This is just a small. It's a small story. It's a little funny example. But back when I was an intern in Santa Clara in the US, so I used to sit at the headquarters. And Andy Bryant used to be our CFO at that point in time. And Paul Ottley, who's still the CEO, was the CEO. And Intel actually had no offices. Right? So it had everybody was out in cubes, including Ottley and Andy Bryant and everybody else. And you had conference rooms. Now, at that point in time, I was a little naive. I didn't realize that conference rooms were actually also associated with the CEO and CFO. So there were some conference rooms which were not supposed to be booked. But if their admin ever made a mistake, they actually came out of the booking system. Now, when I booked a room, the room that I ended up booking was Mr. Andy Bryant's room. So I had a meeting with the HP folks. There were some HP folks who had come across from Europe, and there were some from the US. And so we went in and we started that meeting. The meeting was supposed to last for the whole day. Halfway through the meeting, I see there's a glass panel in the door, and I see a head peeping in, and I see Ottley, and I see Andy Bryant along with him, and both these guys are peeping in. So I decided something is wrong. So I walked out, and I asked this guy, I said, "What happened?" I said, "That's my room." So I said, "Well, I did a booking, and that's a career limiting move actually at that point. I tell you, CFO and CEO." But I had the HP guys in there, and I said, "I'm not sure, where do I take them at this point in time? But if you really want the room, I'll figure out something." So, but then in that organization, at least the culture was there. The guy said, "No, it's my mistake. I'll go figure out something else." So one is that over a period of time, you need to try and drive a culture also. But the second thing is that you have ways and means of getting around it.
My question is around the bandwidth requirement for, especially around the HD video conferencing. So that is, we want to give VC to most of the people, but then this bandwidth is creating a lot of, especially when it's an international bandwidth that I'm talking about. When vendor comes, it's minimum is around 1.5 to 10 people per person, especially when it's a multi-party conference. The bandwidth requirement can, reach up to many levels. So are we doing anything about, releasing new Codecs for reduced bandwidth requirements?
So bandwidth, I think, is something which we've continuously improved on over a period. Actually, every vendor is doing that. So it's not just us, but Polycom probably had the lead in this. We did this almost about a year back. On standard video conferencing codecs today, right, for high definition, which at 1024, 1024p, at that point in time, the bandwidth that you require is 2 megabits. It's as simple as that. Right, you require 2 megabits plus you require something for content, and plus whatever the overhead is. So really, if you are actually trying to do a high definition video conference, then per site, right, what you need really is is at least 3 MB that you're bringing into a centralized site somewhere where you've got your bridge. Now, if you've got multi-party licenses and all kinds of codecs in different places, then obviously you form a mesh network, in which case the bandwidth requirements are higher. So first you need to design your network in a manner that it's a star network at least, so that you have one hub where the bandwidth requirements are met. So that is one. Second, last year, or actually the year before that, what we've actually ended up doing is that now we've brought in something which we call as high profile, one of the compression techniques, which now brings down the bandwidth requirement to about half of that. So that's come down to about 1 meg. So it's moved from 2 meg to 1 meg. So 1 meg is for the for the high definition video conferencing. You still require something for content, you still require something for overhead. But now instead of 3, you can actually add 2 to absolutely high quality, high def video conferencing. If you want to come down to 720p, right, then in that case you actually further reduce to 512 megabits. But that, from a perspective of the technology that exists today, that's the minimum bandwidth that you will require for high definition video conferencing. If there are locations where you are willing to compromise the quality, you step below, right, to standard definition, 4 SIF quality, so on and so forth, the bandwidth can actually be stepped down. And today's techniques where you have capability in the MCUs to have multiple options of at least where there is high bandwidth, give full high definition, where there is not that much bandwidth, give lower definition over there, or continue with the call so that there is no pixelization of the call. So those capabilities exist today. But when if you're going to look at something like high definition video conferencing, bandwidth is something that one must live.
Michael, it will be perhaps best that we go and have a few drinks. Right? Would you like to say anything in closing?
I'd really not like to talk about cricket this evening. I'm very depressed. And I know Mr. Watson's very popular here, so we're sending him home. He's going to go back and work on his PowerPoint presentations. I thank you all very much for coming. We are delighted that you're here and we get to talk to you. It's wonderful. Thank you very much for facilitating.
No, thank you for being here. It's always good to have, when people like you visit, it gives us a chance to invite a few people and get together. So great to have you. Thank you, Neeraj.
Thank you very much.
Please join us for drinks together.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.